Hello everyone, Irish Commander here. Welcome to the second episode of Behind the Scenes. Today we will be taking a look at some of my rules for the superpowers of either communist or nationalist China, and we'll even be looking at the still unfinished rules of the Axis miners. So, with that being said, let's get into it. So I think first, for the two Chinese superpowers, well, there will only be one, as we know. And before I tell you about my house rules, we need to take a look at the basic rules, so that way we know what we're talking about here. And the basic rules are, if either one of them takes over all of the land territories in the home country of China, which includes all of the warlords, Communist China, Nationalist China, oddly enough, Tibet, and I am going to include Manchuria as well, since I feel like that is a integrated part of China. So that's how you reach that status of a superpower for either nationalist or communist China. Now, I have only seen one game online on YouTube where either one of them has even gotten to that point, which is nationalist China, since they have since they have the upper hand and they have more likelihood of getting there. There's one thing I saw in that playthrough that knocked China out of I believe it knocked China, which was the nationalists, it knocked them out of their superpower status, and if it were to happen in my game, well, what I'm saying is, if it happened in my game, it would knock them out, but since the territory they lost to a foreign nation was in Manchuria, it didn't matter. They were still a superpower. Or a major power, I guess you could say, would be the more appropriate term for this game. So, what I'm going to do is make it to where if they lose a territory, they do not lose that status of a major power, which means if the Soviets were to come over here in these warlord territories and invade after nationalist China has gained its superpower status or major power status, communist China would not return, as they have been defeated, wiped out, and that is one of my house rules for the East Asia that I am telling you today. I also wanted to show off, I haven't really had the chance to show off these units that I bought from Historical Board Gaming. So if you remember, back a couple months ago, when I got my big order for all the roundels and whatnot, and these infantry here, this, basically beyond these infantry and these roundels, I had nothing, even if they gained superpower status or major power status, as I keep on correcting myself. And people will just say, oh, just use the American pieces or the Soviet pieces. I don't think that's an accurate representation of those two nations, or, well, one of them, as I've been saying. I don't think that's an accurate representation if they become a power. They just use other nations' stuff when they produce it. That's not accurate. So what I did is I went out and bought enough pieces for them, so when they become, or if they become a major power, either one of them, then they will have all these pieces to use. So you can see here I did my color coding on the fighters and the medium bombers. I didn't bother ordering heavy bombers or trying to get them because I don't believe Historical Board Gaming sells heavy bombers for either one of them. And what I mean by heavy bombers, what piece I'm looking for is 4 engines. So kind of like this, here, let me grab the Soviet one. So kind of like this Soviet one, but a little scaled backwards. Similar to the size of the British. So I'm waiting on that, but I think that this is what they'll need. They'll need tanks, mechanized, and they'll have, and this will be motorized, I believe, in a few after Christmas. Then they'll have mechanized, which is the armored cars. And correct me if I'm wrong with this, but I'm still fairly new to the unit distinguish. I'm still fairly new to adding all these units and calling them by their proper names. So we've got, then they also got artillery, fighters, and medium bombers, as I said. So that's what I think each nation will need, and you're probably going to say, well, what about Navy? Now, currently, Russia in the red piece does not have a Navy, but with the new Russian set coming out, I will be making an order after Christmas, after the one I've already been discussing, and getting those naval pieces. And I will also be expanding my nationalist navy, as I do have a few ships spray painted for them, as I do have the color. But yeah, now it's time to talk about the other Japanese puppet, of which its roundel just came out on the website, which got me excited, so I decided to make this video. So let's talk about that puppet for a minute. So as we all know, Manchuria is a puppet of Japan in the expansion set. And then when I discovered the other puppet, I believe it's called Menyang, I'm going to call it that, but it existed right around here, in between, somewhere right here. And it was a puppet of Japan, obviously. And it was there to take over Mongolia if they ever got there to it. It was the Japanese planned to expand into Mongolia, so that was going to be their puppet for that, since China did own, or the Chinese warlords, rather, did own territories that were called, well, had a lot of Mongolians in them. So, my house rule is, if Japan takes over this territory and invades at least one Mongolian territory, they can form Minyang. Or they can at least form it right here in this territory when they take it over. But they have to declare war on Mongolia immediately after. So I'm still working on that one, but my rules for the major power versions of the communist and the nationalist are complete. And I do have alternate symbols from the ones I have in the beginning. Because in my opinion, we've seen them so many times, these two symbols, or roundels, and we are used to seeing them as minor powers in those symbols. So what I did is, last year, I bought this. This is the World War I flag for China, and this is the post-World War II flag, or post-Chinese Civil War flag. So, as we know, that's the modern flag, that's World War I flag. And they were a republic, they're communist. So I thought, you know what, it would fit perfectly for when they become major powers. So yeah. Now let's get on to the second half of this video, or third, depending on how it goes. Let's talk about the Axis miners. Let's switch from Asia to Europe for a moment. Let me see if I can move this upward without knocking stuff over. There we go. There we go. So, we all know, I'm trying to think about how to word this. In this game, Germany annexes countries that would be independent rather than being a puppet or, well, actual territory of the German Reich. So what I've done is I've created a minor power, hence the name Axis Minors, for Germany to control. Now, let's talk about the formation of this minor power. So first, Germany has to have Slovakia and Hungary on its side, which I am going to be getting the new roundel to distinguish them as an independent nation in between the time that Germany just pretty much eats Bohemia up here, because they would be a neutral territory, and I don't want that. I didn't want the Axis Minors to have a premature formation. That's what I was looking for, the word. So I've figured out that, the conclusion I've came to is that Hungary and Slovakia must be allied with Germany in order to form this nation, the Axis Minors. And the Germans also get a bonus in their income. They already get a bonus from forming the Axis Minors, but they also get a bonus if they get Romania with them as well. So a nice little strategy would be to get Slovakia, Hungary, and Romania on your side, so that way you can form the Axis Minors pretty well and have it all in there. You might be saying, what about Bulgaria there and Yugoslavia? Bulgaria can be added to them, to the Axis Minors as well, in addition. And all they will get from Bulgaria is the units that they had from being neutral. Now what about Yugoslavia? Well, Yugoslavia is an interesting case here, because, well, if I can get it without messing up the camera angle too much. Let me show you with the Fascist Croatia War overlay as reference. So, as some of you may know, in World War II, Yugoslavia was divided a little bit like this. Here, let me grab this roundel for reference. So, most likely by the time Yugoslavia falls, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, and probably Bulgaria as well will be under the Axis Minors, and I just used the gray German roundel for that. What will happen, and some people ask, well, no one's asked me this yet, but you might be wondering, what will happen to Slovenia, Croatia, and Serbia? Serbia will be integrated immediately into the Axis Minors. Croatia, on the other hand, will be an independent nation. It will be a neutral nation lenient towards the Axis as a whole, not just the Germans and the Axis Minors. And for Slovenia, they will be integrated into Germany immediately. So that's what happens if you're playing with this overlay. If you're just playing with the game normally, then Yugoslavia either becomes German occupied or Italian occupied, depending on who invades them. And something I added just for a little bit of historical accuracy is that Macedonia can be integrated because Bulgaria in World War II, they annexed that part of Greece. So you can add that and you'll get an extra infantry or possibly a militia. Like I said, I'm just developing these rules. But anyway, that was my second episode of Behind the Scenes, where we're diving a little bit deeper into house rule territory. And I'm not sure when the next one of these is going to be. I wasn't planning on making this one. When I saw the Manyang roundel went up on the site, and then the Slovakia roundel went up on the site, I got excited and I said, you know what, I'll go ahead and make this video for the heck of it. And explain my Chinese rules and Axis Miners rules. I wouldn't expect any more of these behind the scenes videos until after Christmas, because as some of you know, we've got the Winter War event on the way. So, you know, look at that trophy. This is just plain paper. I didn't get it all nice and made up and everything, but I have all my roundels on here. Got a couple of the expansion sets we'll be using. And yeah, I think I may make another behind the scenes on updating my war room, or I'll just make another just standard video on updating my war room as a whole, because like I said, after Christmas my war room is getting updated slightly. I'll be getting, like I said, another set of battle boards there. I'll be dividing up my charts by alliance, so there will be 2 new sets of charts, and then we'll get 2 more of these to divide them up. Anyway, this is Irish Commander, and until we meet again, this is me signing off.